In today's episode, a new man-eating leopard is still on the loose, terrorizing small villages around the Junar forest in India. Within the last 30 days, there have been 3 fatalities by this deadly leopard. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. Welcome to Final Affliction. The most recent spate of leopard attacks in the Junar forest happened recently in 2024. The 13 villages that dot the area, littered with sugarcane plantations in between patches in the forest, are in for a nightmare if officials can't catch the predators responsible. The village has lost 3 of the most vulnerable members in the last 30 days alone to the leopards. The young and old are the ones being targeted, and tensions are starting to rise. If the government can't find a solution, then parents and families will find another way to protect their kids. It all started with Sanskruti Kolakar on the 11th of April, a 1.5-year-old baby girl who was out in the field with her father. Sanjay took his daughter along for his morning chores as often as he could. He genuinely liked her company, and she certainly enjoyed playing in the shaded grass beside the shed. She was playing just a few yards behind Sanjay when he was setting up a shelter for the sheep he was herding. While the larger human was distracted, the leopard, who'd been watching them for the past hour, finally took the opportunity it had been waiting for. It stalked them from the sugarcane reeds in the field next to them. It was so silent that neither the girl nor her father even heard it coming. When it reached their turned backs, it grabbed Sanskruti and bolted back around to the field. The little girl didn't even have a chance to scream. The leopard's powerful jaws closed around her neck, letting out a bone-cracking snap through the air. It was that sickening crack that made Sanjay turn around, only for him to see his daughter's limp body inside the jaws of the leopard disappearing into the rows of sugarcane. Sanjay snapped out of his stunned stupor and ran after them, but the animal was too fast. Sanskruti was such a tiny child that her weight didn't slow it down at all. All Sanjay could do was to turn back and find help. Authorities jumped into action as soon as they got the alert. They issued drones and helicopters to track the few leopards that had tracking collars, but to no avail. Sanskruti's remains, or what little was left, was later found deep in the fields near the edge of the forest. Almost a month later, a woman in her 30s was attacked while working on a plantation, presumably by the same animal, but she miraculously survived. She nearly lost an arm, and she'll never have full use of it again. This brave survivor prompted the cat to leave the healthy adults alone after that. She'd put up such a fight that she pulled out a chunk of the leopard's skin and hair with her bare hands. The patch of skin she managed to yank out was a significant amount, and that adrenaline-fueled burst of strength was probably what saved her life. Just 2 days later, on May 7th, Rudwa Fatali, an 8-year-old boy, was out playing in the front yard of his aunt's house. He and his family had come from the city to visit relatives in the village of Kulwati. His mother and aunts inside the house heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the front yard. The woman inside the kitchen ran out just in time to see Rudwa's bare feet disappear into the sugarcane field as the spotted cat dragged his body away. Rudwa's relatives stormed in after him, and the leopard let go of his neck to flee from the oncoming horde of ferocious women armed with pots and broomsticks. Sadly, Rudwa was already dead when they reached him, his neck completely ripped out. Now a pattern was starting to develop. All of the fatal attacks were children, and it all happened next to or within the sugarcane fields. All cat species are highly adaptable, but few can compete with the leopards and the cougars. The leopards of India haven't been deterred by the farms that are taking over their habitat like the other creatures. Instead, they've molded themselves in such a way that they've begun to use those neat rows of fields to their advantage, both for hunting and as a safe place to seek shelter at night. This recent man-eating leopard is a prime example of making the best of a situation, though that turns out to be the worst possible scenario for the people who work and live there. 3 days later, the villagers, still reeling from the loss of Rudwa, a 50-year-old woman named Nanubhai Kadale, went out to tend to her farm. Situated next to the row of crops, she was hunched over, with her back facing the field, untangling a hose pipe. This was the moment that the creature watched so silently from the field was waiting for. It sprinted silently toward her, and Nanubai only became aware of the stalker when it sprang onto her back. This wasn't the point-precision aim it utilized with the children. The leopard missed her neck. Instead, its teeth sank into her right shoulder, and its claws sliced through her clothes, raking through the skin on her back. Screaming in terror and pain, Nanubai went down, face first, into the tangled hose and the dirt. Now that it had gotten her off her feet, the animal extracted its teeth and bit down again, and this time its aim was true. It clamped down on the jugular, crushing her windpipe as it did so. Nanubai's screams were cut off abruptly, but it had been enough to alert the workers who were just stepping in through the front gates to start their day just an acre away. Tragically, they were too far off to make it in time to save her. By the time they'd run over, the leopard, with Nanubai still alive and losing consciousness from lack of air and loss of blood, dragged her by her neck into the fields. The farmhands ran after the sound and followed the trail of blood left behind in the attack's wake, screaming and yelling as they went. Their machetes and spades were raised, ready to hack Nanubai free from the beast if they had to. But again, it released her to flee from the approaching mob, ripping out as much flesh as it could fit in its mouth from her neck and shoulder. She was dead by the time the group reached her. The villages surrounding the Junar forest are in an absolute uproar. Authorities are truly putting out every resource at their disposal to catch this spotted serial killer. A curfew has been set in place so that no one is out during the dusk or dark hours. Elders and children are chaperoned by armed patrols. 50 guards have been deployed alongside trap cages, 20 night vision cameras, and they've even started handing out firecrackers, imploring villagers to deploy them at random intervals. So far, the crackers have been the most effective at all. Every time workers set them off before they go into the fields, the sugarcane stalks become alive with rustlings as creatures big and small flee from the blasts. The traps worked very well too, but the success also brought a startling reality to the forefront. It might not be a single leopard responsible for the quadruple attacks. 7 leopards, caught in just 7 days, were captured within the 5-mile radius surrounding the Junar Forest's villages. Determining which animals actually attacked the women and children is impossible, but it could be multiple guilty cats. They hoped to at least identify the leopard responsible for the attack where the woman survived. She managed to rip a piece of fur and skin out of the animal's back, which would make that leopard easily identifiable. But of all the leopards they caught, none of them showed any wounds that matched, so that one is still out there somewhere. Since then, authorities have found half a dozen abandoned lairs that showed signs of cubs having been born there recently. There is no question that dozens of leopards are lurking the forest nearby. In light of this discovery, officials have taken a rather extreme step. They've begun to castrate the males before releasing them in protected parks and forests far away. At least that should curb the sudden population boom in leopards without the need to eradicate a protected animal. But the truth is that this is far from over. Those sugarcane fields are not just sustenance for humans. It's become an ecosystem all on its own, alive with rodents, birds, and snakes. And every year, the animals inside those fields get bigger as they're attracted to the smaller game, leading to an ever-growing problem. With humans now part of the food chain too, with all that food now available, it's not surprising that there's been such a rise in their populations. With the leopard's recent taste of blood, there is no telling how many more will soon meet their terrifying final affliction.